This story concerns not only me but every single American in the United States. It is very important that we, as Americans, know exactly who is a Constitution slayer. I can tell you that the federal courthouse in Dallas, Texas is full of such people. In case you did not see Part 1, let me quickly give you a rundown on what happened. I was convicted of income tax evasion and was sentenced to 11 years 3 months in federal prison. I was at the Federal Correctional Institution in Seagoville, Texas. I had a history of health issues, overweight, high blood pressure, glaucoma, high cholesterol, plus I was over 50. So they put me in an air-conditioned cell during the summer. For weeks I had been complaining of my health not doing well. I had no idea the heat was killing me. Neither did they, as the medical staff was very incompetent. At the bottom of one of the government's filings, they say this: although the United States disputes the occurrence of the fainting episode on August 5. Resolution of this disputed fact is not necessary for this appeal. The Constitution slayers called me a liar. Shane, your own discovery even covers this fact. Notice I said fact and not allegation. I am sorry my attorney did not call you out on this lie. Maybe that is why he lost. So, if I never fainted, why did the so-called nurse rush to my cell? The medical staff does not make house calls. The only time the medical staff is in the housing unit is just before an inspection. Imagine that, Shane. To make sure the prison passes this bogus certification process is by putting temporary cooling units in the hallways. They do this so nobody knows they are boiling inmates at over 110 degrees. Yeah, they cheat. Soon as the inspectors leave, they remove the cooling units from the hall. Did you know that, Shane? Let me quickly introduce the players. Here we have Nurse Monica Gifford, who does not know her ass from a hole in the ground. Next, we have my ex-lawyer, Scott Gray. Still trying to get my file, Scott. Here is the constitutional slayer and liar, Shane Reed, Assistant United States Attorney, Dallas, Texas. Now we have the federal judge, Sidney Fitzwater, federal court judge, Dallas, Texas. More on him later. Now, let's talk about our Constitution. Pay attention, Sidney and Shane, you might learn something. First, let me point out that there is no way for a private citizen to violate the Constitution. The Constitution is a legal document that establishes the relationship between the United States and the states that comprise it. Private citizens are not party to this agreement and have no duties under it directly. Even the 13th Amendment's ban on slavery doesn't explicitly say that it is unlawful to keep a slave. Rather, what it does is prohibit both the federal government and the states from recognizing property claims in the body of person. It does authorize Congress to make law prohibiting enslavement, which Congress has done. So, the only parties who can violate the Constitution directly are the United States itself, the states, and the various officers of the United States and of the states. There is no meaningful way to punish the United States or a state. Officers of the federal government who fail to perform their duties as required by the Constitution may be impeached and removed from office upon conviction. Officers of either state or federal government, such as Kim Davis, an officer of the state of Kentucky, may be ordered, under the threat of imprisonment for contempt, to comply with the requirements of the Constitution, and to perform such acts as may be required to bring the government they serve back into compliance with the Constitution. This is, in part, why lawsuits to vindicate constitutional rights are filed against the pertinent officer, rather than against the United States or the state itself. The usual result of a lawsuit to vindicate a constitutional right or immunity, in fact, is an order that either requires a named government officer to do a thing that the Constitution requires of them, or prohibits a named officer, and all those under his or her direction, from doing something that the Constitution prohibits of them. If the officer complies with the order, there will generally be no punishment. Note further that Congress has the power to pass all such legislation as is needful and proper to implement the powers of the federal government as assigned to it by the Constitution, as well as to protect the rights that the Constitution preserves to the states, or to the people. where Congress has exercised this power to enact statutes that establish a penalty for someone who acts in contravention of a constitutionally protected right. The penalty established in that statute may be applied to those who act in contravention of the statute. There are many such statutes, the most notable of which are probably the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Both of these acts include provisions creating a variety of civil and criminal offenses for people who engage in acts in contravention of the constitutional rights that these laws seek to protect. Now, let me point out some rules for government employees, but a person who cares nothing about the Constitution certainly does not give a shit about rules. Here is the rule: employees are prohibited from accepting compensation for speaking or writing, and in some cases, teaching, too, that relates to official duties. These activities relate to your official duties if you are invited to speak or write because of your official position or by someone whose interests you may affect in performing your duties. Let us review. Number 1. The Constitution was written to protect us from them, not for me. Hell, leave it to me and we would round up all the baby rapers, lying assistant United States attorneys, rip out their fingernails and dip them in salt. So, the Eighth Amendment was for you. Do you not think that locking someone in a room that is 115 degrees is cruel and unusual punishment? Now, you got out of this by claiming some discretionary exemption. At no time can the United States brutally violate the Eighth Amendment and look at some stupid rule to get out of it. So much for your court, Sidney. When you raised your hand and swore to God to defend the Constitution, what were you thinking? Ever read it?